I never thought I'd be the type of person to cut off my own family. Growing up, I was always told that family comes first, no matter what. But sometimes, when you're drowning, you have to let go of the anchors pulling you down, even when those anchors are the people who raised you. My name is Sarah, I'm 32 years old, and I work as a senior marketing manager for a tech company in Seattle. I've always been what you'd call the responsible one. While my younger sister Emma was out partying through college on our parents' dime, I was working 2 jobs to pay my way through business school. While she was traveling Europe for 6 months after graduation, I was grinding 60-hour weeks to build my career. By the time this story begins, I had everything I'd worked for. A beautiful downtown apartment with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, a healthy savings account, a closet full of professional clothes I'd earned every thread of, and a life I was genuinely proud of. I thought I had it all figured out. I had my weekly routine down to a science: morning workouts, productive days at the office, evening wine with my boyfriend Marcus, weekend brunches with friends. My apartment was my sanctuary, decorated exactly how I wanted it, every piece of furniture carefully chosen and paid for with my own money. I remember feeling this deep satisfaction every morning when I'd wake up and look around at what I'd built for myself. But there was always this underlying tension whenever my family was involved. My parents, Linda and Robert, owned a small but successful catering business back in my hometown of Portland. They'd always been comfortable, but never wealthy. What they lacked in money, they made up for in their ability to spoil Emma. She was their golden child, their baby, the one who could do no wrong. At 28, she'd never held a job for more than 6 months, had never paid her own rent, and had never faced a real consequence for any of her actions. I'd lost count of how many times they'd bailed her out. There was the time she crashed her car while texting and driving, and instead of making her deal with the insurance and consequences, they bought her a brand new Honda Civic. When she dropped out of her master's program halfway through, they paid the full tuition anyway, and never asked her to pay them back. When she got evicted from 3 different apartments for not paying rent, they always swooped in with their checkbook. Meanwhile, when I'd asked them for help with a security deposit on my first apartment after college, they told me it would be good for me to figure it out on my own. When I wanted to take a professional development course that cost $2,000, they said they couldn't afford it. But somehow, they could always afford Emma's latest crisis. I'd tried to make peace with this dynamic over the years. I told myself that being independent made me stronger, that their favoritism said more about them than it did about me. But deep down, it hurt. It hurt every Christmas when Emma got lavish gifts while I got practical ones. It hurt every family dinner when they'd spend the entire meal talking about Emma's latest adventure while barely asking about my job. It hurt, but I'd learned to swallow it down and keep moving forward. That all changed on a rainy Thursday evening in October. I was just getting home from work, still in my heels and blazer, when my phone rang. It was my mother, and she sounded frantic. "Sarah, honey, we need to talk to you about something important." I could hear my father's voice in the background, and Emma crying. My stomach immediately dropped. "What's wrong?" I asked, kicking off my shoes and sinking into my couch. "Emma's in trouble. She lost her job at the gallery last month, and she's been too embarrassed to tell us. She hasn't been able to pay her rent, and her landlord is evicting her. She has nowhere to go." I closed my eyes. Here we go again. "Mom, I'm sorry to hear that, but what does this have to do with me?" "Well, we were thinking, you have that beautiful big apartment, and you're doing so well for yourself. Emma could stay with you for a few months, just until she gets back on her feet. I felt my blood pressure rising. Mom, my apartment is a one-bedroom. There's literally nowhere for her to sleep except my couch. That's perfect. She won't be any trouble, I promise. She just needs a place to land. I could hear Emma in the background saying something about how she'd always wanted to live in Seattle, how it would be like a fun sister adventure. My mother continued talking as if this was already decided. Your father and I would help with expenses, of course. We were thinking we could send you some money each month to help cover groceries and utilities. Have you asked Emma what her plan is for finding a new job? There was a pause. Well, she's been going through a lot emotionally. This whole situation has been very traumatic for her. We think she needs some time to heal before she jumps back into the workforce. I rubbed my temples. So, you want her to move in with me, with no job, no timeline for getting a job, and no real plan beyond hiding out on my couch? Sarah, she's your sister. We family sticks together. That phrase, I'd heard it my entire life, but it was always a one-way street. Family sticks together when Emma needs something. Family sticks together when Emma screws up. But when I needed support, when I was struggling, somehow the family sticking together principle never seemed to apply. I need to think about this, I said. What's to think about? She's flying out this weekend. Her flight lands Sunday at 3. Mom, you can't just decide this without asking me first. We did ask you. We're asking you right now. That's when I realized they'd already bought her ticket. They'd already made this decision. This phone call wasn't a request. It was a notification. I spent the entire weekend dreading Sunday afternoon. I cleaned my apartment obsessively, rearranged my living room to try to figure out how a couch could possibly work as a bedroom, and tried to convince myself that maybe this time would be different. Maybe Emma had learned from her mistakes. Maybe this would only be temporary. Marcus tried to be supportive, but I could see the concern in his eyes when I explained the situation. How long do you think she'll stay? He asked. I said a few months. And you believe that? I didn't answer, because I didn't. Emma arrived with 6 suitcases, 2 large boxes, and an entitled attitude that made my skin crawl. She waltzed into my apartment like she was checking into a luxury hotel, immediately commenting on how small it was compared to what she'd expected. Oh wow, I thought it would be bigger from the pictures you posted online, she said, dropping her bags in the middle of my living room. Where's the guest room? There isn't one. You'll be sleeping on the couch. She made a face like I'd told her she'd be sleeping in a cardboard box. For how long? That depends on how quickly you find a job. She waved her hand dismissively. I'm not taking just any job. I have a degree in art history. I need to find something that's actually worth my time. Over the next 2 weeks, I watched Emma settle into my life like a parasite. She slept until noon every day while I was at work. She ate my food, used my expensive skincare products, and left her stuff scattered all over my carefully organized space. She took long baths in my bathroom, using my towels and leaving wet clothes draped over my furniture. When I came home exhausted from work, she'd be on my couch watching Netflix, surrounded by empty takeout containers that she'd ordered using my delivery apps. She never cleaned up after herself, never offered to help with anything, and acted like I was being unreasonable when I asked her to at least keep her belongings in one corner of the living room. You're being kind of uptight about this, she said when I asked her to please not leave dirty dishes in my sink for days at a time. It's not like you're using all this space anyway. The worst part was the job search, or lack thereof. Every morning, I'd ask Emma what her plans were for the day, and she'd always have some excuse. She was networking on social media. She was researching companies online. She was taking a mental health day because job searching was stressful. Meanwhile, my parents called constantly to check on their precious daughter. Not to ask how I was handling having my life turned upside down, but to make sure Emma was comfortable and happy. "How's our girl doing?" my mother would ask. "She's fine, Mom, but we need to talk about a timeline here. It's been 2 weeks, and she hasn't even applied for a single job." "Oh, Sarah, don't pressure her too much. She's been through a lot. These things take time." "What things?" "She lost her job because she was showing up late and spending her shifts on Instagram. That's not trauma, that's consequences. You don't understand what it's like to be in her position." But I did understand. I'd been unemployed before. I'd been broke before. The difference was that when I was struggling, I worked 3 part-time jobs to make ends meet, instead of expecting other people to take care of me. The breaking point came on a Friday night in November. Marcus and I had planned a romantic dinner at home. I'd left work early to cook his favorite meal, bought expensive wine, and even bought new candles to make the evening special. We'd been together for almost 2 years, and I'd been hoping he might propose soon. This dinner felt important. I was in the kitchen preparing everything when Emma emerged from the bathroom, dressed up and clearly heading out for the night. "Where are you going?" I asked. "Out with some friends I met on Instagram. There's this really cool art opening downtown." I looked at her outfit, her makeup, her designer purse that our parents had bought her for Christmas last year. "With what money?" She shrugged. "I'll figure it out." That's when I realized she'd been using my credit card. I'd left it on the counter earlier that week after ordering groceries online, and apparently she'd memorized the numbers. "Emma, did you use my credit card?" "Just for the Uber, and maybe some dinner. It's not a big deal. I'll pay you back." "With what money? You don't have a job?" God, Sarah, why are you being so dramatic? "It's like $30. That's when Marcus arrived. I could see him taking in the scene. My sister dressed to go out partying while I was stressed and angry in the kitchen. My romantic dinner plans clearly derailed. "Is everything okay?" he asked, carefully. "It's fine," Emma said brightly. Sarah's just being Sarah. I excused myself to the bathroom and cried angry tears for 5 minutes. When I came back out, Emma was gone, and Marcus was trying to salvage our dinner plans. We had a nice evening, but something felt different. I could see the questions in his eyes, the way he was evaluating my life and my choices. After he left that night, I sat in my living room surrounded by Emma's mess and realized something had to change. I couldn't keep living like this. I couldn't keep subsidizing her lifestyle while she showed me no respect and gave me nothing in return. I started keeping receipts. Every time she used my toiletries, ate my food, or charged something to my accounts, I wrote it down. I started taking photos of the state she left my apartment in. I began documenting every conversation where my parents defended her behavior or told me I was being too hard on her. I also started looking for a new apartment. I told myself I was just exploring options, but deep down, I knew I was planning my escape. The final straw came 3 weeks later. I was supposed to attend my company's annual holiday party, a big fancy event that was important for networking and my career. I'd bought a beautiful dress, booked a hair appointment, and was genuinely excited about it. Marcus was going to be my date, and several of my colleagues had mentioned they were looking forward to meeting him. 2 days before the party, my mother called. "Sarah, honey, we have wonderful news. Your father and I are flying out to Seattle this weekend to see Emma and take her on a little shopping trip. We thought it would be fun to make it a family weekend." "This weekend? Mom, I have my company holiday party on Saturday night." "Oh, that's perfect. We can all go together. It'll be so nice for your coworkers to meet the family." I felt my stomach drop. My parents had never expressed any interest in my work events before. They'd never even asked about my job beyond polite small talk. But now that Emma was here, suddenly they wanted to be involved in my life? "Mom, this is a work event. It's not really appropriate to bring family members unless they're specifically invited. Don't be silly. I'm sure no one will mind. Emma looks so beautiful in her new dress, and your father and I would love to see where you work." "What new dress?" "Oh, We sent her some money to buy something nice for the party. She found this gorgeous designer dress online. It was a bit expensive, but she deserves to feel beautiful. I closed my eyes. They'd sent Emma money for a dress to attend my work party that she wasn't invited to, after years of telling me they couldn't afford to help me with anything. Mom, I'm not bringing Emma to my work party. Why not? She's family. There it was again. Family sticks together. Family, family, family. But only when it benefited Emma. Because she doesn't work for my company, and it's not appropriate. Sarah, I'm disappointed in you. We're flying all the way out there to spend time with our daughters. And you're being selfish about some work party. It's not some work party. It's an important networking event for my career. Your career will be fine. Family is what matters. That night, I made my decision. I'd been looking at apartments for weeks, and I'd found a perfect one-bedroom place across town. It was actually nicer than my current apartment, with better amenities and a view of the Sound. I could afford it easily on my own, and the landlord had already approved my application. I called my real estate agent and told her I wanted to move forward with the lease. I arranged for movers to come the following Friday, while Emma would be out with our parents. I opened a new bank account and started transferring my money. I changed my passwords on all my delivery apps and subscriptions. I planned it like a military operation. I was done being the family doormat. I was done subsidizing Emma's lifestyle while being treated like a second-class citizen in my own family. I was done with parents who would fly across the country to take Emma shopping, but had never once visited me just to see how I was doing. That Friday morning, I told Emma I had to work late and wouldn't be home until after 9. She barely looked up from her phone to acknowledge me. My parents were taking her to some expensive spa day, followed by dinner at the Space Needle. They'd invited me, but I'd declined, saying I was too busy with work. This was true, but not in the way they thought. The movers arrived at 10 a.m. sharp. It took them 4 hours to pack up my entire life and transport it to my new apartment. I left Emma's belongings exactly where they were, along with a note explaining that I'd moved out and she needed to make other arrangements. I also left a detailed invoice of everything she'd cost me over the past 6 weeks. $567 in food, $215 in toiletries and personal items, $89 in unauthorized credit card charges, and $120 in increased utility bills. I included copies of all the receipts I'd been saving. I also left a copy of my lease termination notice, showing that I'd given proper notice to my landlord and that the lease would expire at the end of the month. Emma would have exactly 2 weeks to figure out her next move. I spent Friday night in my new apartment, sitting on my couch in my empty living room, drinking wine and feeling a mixture of relief and terror. I'd actually done it. I'd chosen myself over my family's expectations. My phone started ringing around 6 p.m. First Emma, then my mother, then my father, then Emma again. I let them all go to voicemail. The messages were exactly what I expected. Emma was hysterical, crying about how I'd abandoned her and ruined her life. My mother was furious, demanding I call her back immediately and fix this situation. My father was disappointed in me for leaving my sister homeless and devastated. By Saturday morning, I had 47 missed calls and 32 text messages. The messages escalated from angry to guilt-trippy to threatening. My mother's final text read, "If you don't call me back in the next hour, don't bother calling at all. You are not the daughter we raised." I went to my company holiday party that night with Marcus, and I had the best time I'd had in months, without the stress of worrying about what mess I'd come home to, without the constant low-level anxiety of having someone in my space who didn't respect me. I felt like myself again. I networked confidently, laughed genuinely, and enjoyed being around my colleagues. Marcus noticed the difference immediately. "You seem lighter tonight," he said as we were dancing. "I moved out yesterday," I told him. He stopped dancing and looked at me with surprise. "You moved out of your own apartment?" I moved to a new apartment. Emma and my parents are no longer my problem. He kissed me right there on the dance floor, and I felt this overwhelming sense of rightness about my decision. Over the next few weeks, I learned the full extent of the fallout. Emma had called our parents in hysterics, and they'd had to cut their weekend trip short to help her figure out her next steps. They'd ended up booking her a hotel room for 2 weeks while they tried to find her a more permanent solution. Emma had posted dramatic messages on social media about being abandoned by family and left homeless by my own sister. Posts backfired spectacularly when several of our mutual acquaintances who knew the real story commented with facts about her behavior over the years. Our cousin Jake, who'd witnessed Emma's entitled behavior at family gatherings for years, commented, maybe this is what she needs to finally grow up. My parents tried every manipulation tactic in the book. They called me selfish, ungrateful, and heartless. They told me I was destroying the family. They said I'd changed and that success had made me cold. But something interesting happened. The longer I went without responding to their guilt trips, the more clearly I could see the patterns. I realized that every single family crisis for the past decade had somehow required me to sacrifice something: my time, my money, my peace of mind, my relationships. But when I needed support, I was told to handle it myself because it would make me stronger. 3 weeks after I moved out, my mother called with a different tone. Sarah, we need to talk. Emma's situation has become complicated. It turned out that Emma had been evicted from her Portland apartment, not just for not paying rent, but for throwing parties that disturbed the neighbors and for damaging the property. The landlord was pursuing her for damages. She also owed money to several credit card companies and had apparently been borrowing money from friends for months before losing her job. We didn't realize how bad things had gotten, my mother admitted. We thought if she could just get a fresh start in Seattle. You thought you could make her my problem instead of dealing with it yourselves. There was a long pause. We were trying to help her. No, Mom, you were enabling her. And you were using me to do it. My mother started crying. We just wanted our family to be together. Family doesn't mean one person always giving and another person always taking. That's not family, that's exploitation. After I hung up, I felt something I'd never felt before. Genuine peace with my decision. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't hurt. I was just free. I found out later that Emma had eventually moved back in with our parents. She'd gotten a part-time job at a local coffee shop after my father threatened to cut off her phone if she didn't start contributing anything to her own life. My parents had been forced to confront the reality that their golden child was not the independent, successful adult they'd convinced themselves she was. A few months later, Emma called me directly. She was crying, but it was different from her usual dramatic tears. Sarah, I need to apologize to you. I've been in therapy, and I'm starting to understand how badly I've treated you. I listened carefully, waiting for the catch, the request, the manipulation. I took advantage of you, and I took advantage of Mom and Dad. I've never really taken care of myself, and I didn't even realize how much that was hurting everyone around me. What changed? I asked. When you left, I was so angry. I felt abandoned and betrayed. But then I had to figure out how to live without someone always fixing my problems. And I realized how helpless I'd become. I realized that Mom and Dad weren't helping me by always bailing me out. They were keeping me weak. She paused, and I could hear her taking a shaky breath. I'm not calling to ask for anything. I'm calling to say I'm sorry. And to say thank you. What you did was the kindest thing anyone has ever done for me, even though it didn't feel kind at the time. You forced me to grow up. I didn't forgive her immediately. Trust isn't rebuilt with one conversation. but it was a start. My parents took longer to come around. My father called me 6 months later to tell me that he and my mother had started going to family therapy. "We're learning that we might have made some mistakes in how we raised you girls," he said carefully. "What kind of mistakes?" "The therapist says we might have been, enabling Emma's dependence. And she says we might have been taking advantage of your independence." It wasn't a full apology, but it was acknowledgement. It was more than I'd ever expected to get from them. Today, a year and a half later, my relationship with my family is different. It's not perfect, but it's honest. Emma has her own apartment now, a steady job, and a growing sense of responsibility for her own life. She still struggles sometimes, but she doesn't expect other people to fix her problems for her. My parents and I have dinner once a month when I visit Portland. The conversations are more balanced now. They ask about my work, my relationship with Marcus, my goals and dreams. They don't just talk about Emma anymore. Emma and I text occasionally. She sends me photos of meals she's cooked herself, job performance reviews, small accomplishments that she's proud of. I send her encouragement and congratulations. We're building something new, something based on mutual respect rather than obligation. Marcus proposed 3 months ago. We're planning a small wedding next spring, and for the first time in my life, I'm not worried about family drama overshadowing my special day. I'm not worried about Emma making it about herself, or my parents prioritizing her needs over mine. Because the boundaries I've set are clear, and the consequences for crossing them are real. Setting those boundaries saved my family, even though it felt like I was destroying it at the time. By refusing to enable Emma's dysfunction and my parents' favoritism, I forced all of us to grow and change. I gave Emma the gift of independence, even though she fought it. I gave my parents the opportunity to see their children clearly, without the fog of guilt and manipulation. Most importantly, I gave myself the gift of self-respect. I learned that choosing yourself isn't selfish. It's necessary. I learned that family love without boundaries isn't really love at all. It's just exploitation dressed up in pretty words. If you're reading this and you recognize yourself in my story, I want you to know that you deserve better. You deserve to be valued for more than what you can provide other people. You deserve relationships based on mutual respect, not one-sided obligation. It's scary to set boundaries with family. It's terrifying to risk being called selfish or ungrateful. But the alternative is worse. The alternative is living a life where your value is measured only by your usefulness to other people. You can choose differently. You can choose yourself. And sometimes choosing yourself is the greatest gift you can give the people who love you, because it forces them to love you for who you are, not just for what you do for them. The night I moved into my new apartment, I stood at my window, looking out at the Seattle skyline, and I felt something I'd never felt before. Complete ownership of my own life. Every piece of furniture was mine. Every decision was mine. Every consequence, good or bad, was mine. It was the most beautiful feeling in the world.